Weeks passed since Imade's encounter with the wounded spirit leopard. Each day, Imade longed to make her way back to the river, but she knew she could not without the approval of her father. She decided to wait until he left for Ugbekun, and it wasn't long before that day came. She bade him farewell, and as soon as he was out the door, she bundled food and herbs in a calabash and headed for the rainforest. Finally, she reached her destination. She stood by the river bank, pondering how to summon the spirit leopard, when suddenly the supernatural beast emerged from the bushes. It strode towards Imade with sleek, ethereal grace. Its every movement exuded regal splendor. Taking a deep breath, Imade found herself entranced by the mythical creature's presence. She couldn't believe her luck. Standing before her was a true guardian of Igodomigod, a spirit leopard. Filled with curiosity, Prince Ediae observed the human girl. Memories of the battle still haunted him. For centuries, he had skillfully avoided the human world in his cursed spirit form. However, he felt vulnerable after nearly being captured by the hunters. He couldn't fathom how they had found and trapped him. But this time, he decided to stay and find out about the girl who had healed him with her compassion. Unknown to Imade, after she had freed him, he had followed her back to her village, staying hidden. He watched her for many days before returning back to the rainforest. Today, when he sensed the presence of a human, he knew it was her and decided to reveal himself. Now, as they stood observing each other, his deep emerald eyes locked onto her, and an unspoken gratitude passed between them. The spirit leopard then lowered himself to the ground as a sign of respect. At first, Imade was taken aback at his gesture. Then she realized he was expressing gratitude to her, so she extended her hand and gently touched his nose. The prince, who had long forgotten the sensation of touch, initially recoiled in surprise, but then he leaned in, allowing her to caress him. They spent the whole day in the woods, and soon it was time for Imade to return home. She climbed on the back of the spirit leopard, and they raced home. They reached her home before nightfall of that same day. Every day after, the spirit animal stayed hidden in the backwoods of Imade's home and only came out after Edion Eholo had left home. Prince Ediae had also begun to fall deeply in love with Imade. She was beautiful and kind, nurturing and patient. He wanted to tell her his feelings, but could not because of his cursed nature. So he did the only thing he could do: guard and protect her as much as he could. During the day, he stayed by her side, and at night, he retreated into the bush. One night, as he wandered through the rainforest, his body unexpectedly shifted into its human form. Gazing down at his newfound humanity, he couldn't contain his astonishment. His hand reached to touch his human skin, and he gingerly tested his legs, realizing he could walk like a man. Overwhelmed by this revelation, the prince hurriedly made his way to find Imade. On his journey, fate took a cruel twist, and he transformed back into the spirit leopard. Filled with sadness and confusion, the cursed prince retreated into the depths of the woods. This peculiar transformation repeated for several nights. Each evening, he would become human, only to revert to his cursed form by daybreak. Determined to unravel this enigma, Prince Ediae decided to remain within the rainforest until he could comprehend the truth behind his transformations. Back in Ughelli, poor Imade waited and waited for the spirit leopard, but it did not come. She was sad and thought her new friend had abandoned her. Little did she know that even greater challenges awaited her. Unfortunately, the same disease that had claimed her mother's life returned, casting its shadow over their home. This time, it was her father's turn. It all began with dreadful nighttime coughing fits, and soon Edion Eholo was overcome by a fever. Imade, determined to save her father, sought every herb and potion she could find, but none seemed to work. Exhausted and disheartened, Imade sat outside, her tears flowing freely until her anguished cries reached the ears of the cursed prince. Upon arriving, he saw Edion Eholo lying in a feeble state, his complexion ghostly. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, the prince dashed into the rainforest and returned with a precious item held in his mouth. With a delicate gesture, the spirit leopard nudged a vibrant green leaf toward Imade. Its veins pulsed with vitality as he gently placed it in her hand, silently urging her to administer it to her father. Imade's breath caught in her throat as she grasped the significance of the spirit leopard's gift, a healing herb that held the power to restore her father's life. Swiftly, the herb was transformed into a soothing elixir, which Edion Eholo gratefully consumed. Soon, his strength was restored, and he regained his health. When Imade's father had fully recovered, he was astonished to learn that the mythical spirit leopard, believed to be extinct, had been the one to aid him. With heartfelt gratitude, he expressed his thanks to the spirit leopard. Then something truly unexpected occurred. Before their astonished eyes, the spirit leopard underwent a transformation, reshaping itself into a human form. As the metamorphosis concluded, Prince Ediae stood before them. As soon as he could speak, he shared his story with Imade and her father, revealing his true identity and recounting his years of evading hunters while searching for a cure to break his curse. Edion Eholo listened intently, filled with delight. He felt blessed that fate had brought the cursed prince to their home. He began to suspect that the key to breaking the curse lay in the prince's acts of selfless kindness towards those he had wronged. Edion Eholo decided to journey to Bekun and inform the other Edion of this momentous discovery. Before he departed, he cautioned Imade and Prince Ediae to remain discreet and avoid trouble during his absence. With a heart full of joy, he left the house whistling as the long-lost cursed prince had finally been found. The day Edion Eholo left, Esu, a messenger from the gods, appeared before the prince and Imade. He warned them to flee Ueli and go back to the enchanted rainforest, where it all began. There, they would break the prince's curse, and he would be free forever. Imade had been helping the prince to understand his human side. She decided to accompany him to the enchanted rainforest and help him unravel his curse. Edion Eholo arrived at Bekun and promptly called for a meeting of all the elders. Knowing it would take the other Edion a couple of days to reach the capital, he decided to first inform Edion Oliha about the remarkable discovery. However, upon learning that Eholo had not only encountered the spirit leopard, but that it had formed a bond with his daughter, Oliha, who harbored sinister intentions, ordered Eholo's imprisonment, fearing that the other administrators might discover the truth. When Edion Edoho and Eru eventually arrived at Bekun for the meeting, the cunning elder administrator concocted a false narrative. He claimed to have incarcerated Eholo for harboring a dangerous wild animal with intentions to harm the people of Igodomigod. Alarmed by this accusation, they requested to see Eholo, but Oliha adamantly denied them access. determined to keep his dark secret hidden. The malevolent Edion then summoned a juju priest and enlisted new hunters from Igala land to set off for Ughelli with the mission of capturing the spirit leopard. Upon their arrival at Edion Eholo's compound, an extensive search ensued, but the spirit leopard remained elusive. In desperation, the juju priest utilized a mystical substance, invoking the spirits to reveal the cursed prince's whereabouts. Quickly, they raced to the enchanted rainforest at Ugbekun, determined to capture the prince. Many days passed before Prince Ediae and Imade finally reached the heart of the enchanted rainforest. The mystical woods were teeming with thick vines and towering trees that seemed to stretch endlessly into the heavens. As they ventured deeper into the rainforest, the ancient magic of the land wrapped around them like a cloak. In an instant, Prince Ediae felt his body transform, assuming the form of his spirit beast. Imade, though initially startled by the transformation, quickly regained her composure. Together, they navigated through the dense undergrowth, following a serpentine trail that led them further into the rainforest depths. The trees loomed, the air grew thicker until it became nearly suffocating. The prince struggled to revert to his human form, but the rainforest enchantment held him in its grip. At last, they emerged into a clearing where a sacrificial altar dominated the center, adorned with a macabre of display of animal bones and blood. The prince's growl of recognition echoed through the clearing. It was the very place where he had been cursed a century ago. Suddenly, a dense fog rolled in, shrouding their surroundings and blinding them. Prince Ediae and Imade groped through the mist, coughing and gasping for air as he threatened to smother them. Unable to endure much longer, Imade succumbed to the lack of oxygen and collapsed to the ground, leaving the mystical prince alone to confront his inner demons. As Prince Ediae lay on the ground, wheezing and struggling to breathe, he looked up to see a figure standing before him. Its back turned. A surge of fear coursed through him as the figure slowly turned around, revealing itself to be the spirit of Baba Iha, the royal diviner who had cast the curse upon the prince. His eyes were dark and piercing, and his face was filled with hate. "You have come back," Baba Iha said. "I have been waiting for you. What do you want?" The prince growled, his voice laden with anger. "I want you to pay for what you did," Baba Iha said, with a malevolent grin. "I want you to suffer as I have suffered." The spirit's gaze turned malevolent as it fixed on Imade, and with a sinister flick of its ethereal hand, it conjured an energy ball that hurled toward her. Imade's body jerked uncontrollably as she convulsed in agony on the floor. He was attempting to snuff out her life. "Spare her life. She has nothing to do with this," the prince pleaded. The thought of anything happening to Imade was unbearable. Baba Iha's laughter reverberated eerily through the space. He taunted the prince, reminding him that neither he nor his son would ever be granted respite due to the prince's ill-fated actions. Summoning the last vestiges of his strength, the spirit leopard dragged itself up and threw its body over Imade, shielding her from the malevolent energy. Baba Iha then redirected his cruel intentions toward the prince, reaching out to grasp the spirit leopard's heart. Prince Ediae roared with anguish as a cold, biting wind seemed to pass into him, clenching at his heart. Gathering his resolve, he staggered forward, launching himself at Baba Iha. But the malevolent spirit only laughed, pelting the prince relentlessly with cold energy balls until he was forced backward. Defeated and drained, the prince was dragged toward the ominous altar, which explicably ignited with a furious crimson blaze. Weakened and desperate, he mustered his last ounces of strength, attempting to mount a final assault on the spirit. However, it proved to be his last exertion. With malicious intent, Baba Iha conjured an energy ball that struck the spirit leopard with devastating force, causing the prince's heart to falter and give out. When Prince Ediae next awoke, he found himself in his human form, standing in a pristine, white space, surrounded by the spectral figures of the OGISOs of old. His father's presence moved him deeply, and he prostrated himself on the ground, weeping and imploring for forgiveness. His father touched his head. "All is forgiven, son," he said to the young prince. "I know how lonely this 100-year journey has been for you. You have learned what it means to don the armor of a spirit leopard. Now, you must go back and learn what it means to be a king." The prince shook his head. "Baba," he said, "I am no true king. Besides, I am dead." "The people should find a king amongst the living," the OGISO chuckled. "One cannot just become a king on earth unless one is ordained from the spirit world. You are an ordained king, and you are born to rule all that is of Igodomigod." With those words, the OGISO blew into the eyes of his son, and when Prince Ediae opened his eyes, he realized that he was back in the enchanted forest and Baba Iha still standing over him. Though his body was still weak, but his spirit was renewed. He remembered his father's words, and so he charged at Baba Iha and flung it onto the altar. As he bent to chop off the head of the spirit, he paused. He held the gaze of the royal diviner, and through its eyes he could see the life this man had led as a palace priest, a husband, and a grieving father. The spirit leopard stepped back, and through no power of his own, he had transformed back to the form of a man. Prince Ediae held up his head to the firmaments, and the skies parted ways, allowing clouds of heavenly stars to drop to earth. The spirit of Baba Iha looked up in astonishment at the stairs leading up into the heavens. Up above was his young son with outstretched arms. Baba Iha smiled and ascended the stairs to finally reunite with his son. The sun was setting as Prince Ediae rushed back into the bushes to find Imade. Relieved that she was still alive, but nevertheless weak. Suddenly, they heard the bushes rustling behind them. They turned around and saw Edion Oliha, the chief priest, and a group of fierce hunters standing in front of them. The hunters had nets in their hands, and they had surrounded the clearing. "You too," Edion Oliha said. "You have broken the law by entering the enchanted rainforest." "Do you know who I am?" Prince Ediae asked. "It does not matter. You have committed a crime," the juju priest responded. Though the prince was still weak, he did not want to show weakness, so he chuckled instead. "We have done nothing wrong. I am the cursed prince, and we came here to break the curse." "Lies," the priest said. "The curse is still in effect, and this is just a mirage." "We can prove it to you," Prince Ediae said. Prince Ediae took a deep breath, and though still weak, he transformed into the spirit leopard, which made all gasp in amazement. It had been 100 years since they had all seen a spirit leopard, and the mystical animal stood regal and mighty in all its splendor. "See," Imade told them, "the curse is broken." The chief priest smirked. The prince had fallen for his trick by turning back into his spirit beast form. Quickly, the priest murmured ancient incantations to bind the animal. Then he yelled at the hunters to quickly throw the net full of spikes on the spirit leopard. Imade screamed as one after another they ensnared the spirit leopard with their spiky nets, its magic further weakening its captive. Edion Oliha turned to the chief priest and said, "Let us do it here. It's the perfect place to be ordained." The chief priest agreed. He gestured to the hunters as they tried to move toward Imade. The spirit leopard roared at the hunters, distracting them. Imade quickly ran back into the bushes, escaping her captors. As a hunter moved to chase after her, Edion Oliha yelled for them to leave her. There were more important things to do. So they abandoned her and dragged their captured spirit leopard to the altar. Back in Igodomigod, as soon as Edion Oliha had left, the remaining Edion had come together, determined to visit Edion Eholo in the dungeons. When they got there, he relayed everything that had happened, including the revelations of the cursed prince and Oliha's strange behavior. As they were pondering on Oliha's reason for imprisoning Edion Eholo, Imade appeared through the gates, weak and exhausted from the journey. She described all that had taken place in the enchanted rainforest and Oliha's evil plans. Quickly, the Edionise assembled the royal army of Igodomigodo, and together they headed to the enchanted rainforest. Dusk was settling over the enchanted rainforest, and an eerie hush spread over the ancient trees as the chief priest prepared to perform the ritual that would unlock the supernatural powers hidden within the spirit leopard's blood. Then the juju priest's voice swelled, and his chants began evoking the ancient spirits that slumbered within the rainforest depths. And he pulled Edion Oliha to him. Taking his hand, he made a cut. The spirit leopard's gaze locked onto the priest. With his blade, the juju priest's hand began to descend onto the spirit leopard. Then suddenly, sounds of an ivory horn blasted through the clearing. Emerging through the thick bush, the royal army marched forward, banners billowing in the wind, flanked by the formidable presence of the three Edion and Imade. A fierce battle erupted, the sounds of steel clashing and the echoes of magic could be heard colliding in the enchanted rainforest. High above the fray, Imade's eyes locked onto the altar where the spirit leopard lay entangled in magical nets. Oliha was frantically trying to complete the transfer of power. Swift as a forest breeze, Imade scaled the altar steps, her heart pounding in her chest. She hit Oliha on the head with her machete, sending him falling down, and then swiftly cut the binds off the magical nets to free the prince. As the spirit leopard was freed, he grabbed the evil Edion with its claws and flung it into the thick of the battle. Then it hurled itself into the fray and began tearing through the hunters with a primal ferocity that left no doubt of its wrath. Finally, as the last of the hunters fell, the spirit leopard's gaze turned towards Edion Oliha, who lay wounded and bleeding from the neck. Oliha managed to seize a spear from a fallen hunter's grasp. He poised to hurl it toward Imade with deadly intent, but the spirit leopard sprang into action, leaping powerfully onto Oliha, clamping its jaws around him in a swift and lethal motion. In the wake of the intense battle, an eerie calm descended upon the rainforest. As the dust settled, the spirit leopard's form began a mesmerizing transformation, shifting and shimmering until the majestic creature reverted to the princely figure it had once been. Prince Ediae stood amidst the clearing. His body bore the marks of the evil magic that had assailed him. Yet his spirit burned bright with the euphoria of victory and newfound freedom. A hushed crowd gazed upon the scene, awaiting the outcome with bated breath. Edion Eholo took the lead in hailing the prince, his voice resonating through the rainforest, and soon the other Edion joined in until the entire assembly cried in unison, "OGISO, OGISO, OGISO." Imade's heart swelled with pride and relief. At that moment, their eyes locked in a silent understanding that transcended words. With the battle concluded, it appeared as if the rainforest enchantment had broken. The Edion and the royal army joyously bore their prince back to Igodomigod. In the heart of the kingdom, beneath the watchful eyes of their people, Prince Ediae and Imade exchanged vows, sealing their destiny in a union that defied curses and bridged dimensions. Prince Ediae ascended to his rightful place as king, upholding the legacy of his forefathers as the guardian of Igodomigod, ensuring its continued prosperity and protection.
If you would like us to continue making more Edo folklore videos, smash the like button, leave a comment, and share our videos with your family and friends.